Welcome to our weekly group software supply chain security meeting. Um, Marshall, you've got the first item here. Do you want to get us started?
Yeah, so I was trying to understand exactly when we expected the pipeline uh, ref change to land. I think we're on track for 16.1, but with the external dependency, I also wanted to talk through the implications of it being behind a feature flag and that being whatever we decide on or off by default. I think there's implications either way.
Yeah, I think it's pretty close to being merged at this point, and we have like almost 2 weeks before cutoff. So I would say that like the initial version can be behind a feature flag, and we can probably remove it by the end of the milestone.
Okay, you're saying that it can be merged now and we can potentially remove the feature flag.
Yeah, because basically once it's merged, I'll roll it out over a couple days, and if everything looks good, I can just go ahead and remove the flag.
Okay, cool. That's all I think we need to know for one, but it leads into the second question, which is like, regardless of whether it's behind a feature flag or not, what should the behavior be when the claim cannot be set? And really, this is more on the full CO side, I think, because I don't know if you noticed, Billy, but like I also, as part of that same PR, it updates the sand to be derived from the pipeline ref, which I think is, I think that's the correct behavior, but it has very strong implications if that claim is not populated, obviously, right? And yeah, I'm not sure what the correct behavior would be here. Like my intuition is that it makes sense to like fail hard and not generate a certificate, but I can see. But I think the alternative is that we populate the sand the way that we're populating the sand today, which is, I think, we basically just provide the project plug, like the server URL plus project slug. I just I don't know if it makes sense to have artifacts out there that are being signed both ways or not. Do you have an opinion on that, Billy?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think as long as it's deterministic, I would be okay with the fallback. Like as long as we can clearly document, like if it's under these conditions, then you'll get this SAN. Otherwise, you'll get this other SAN. We can hard fail, but like you said, that will sort of negatively impact like certain workflows will not be able to do the keyless signing flow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think sort of order of how I prefer would be if we can have a static SAN that we can apply to everything, great, let's do that. If we need to have the fallback behavior, that works so long as we can clearly document and say when each would show up. And then finally, if we want to hard fail, that's also fine too. But I'll seeing as this affects your users the most, I'll sort of defer to you all for like what is the preferred behavior there, because this will sort of be a documentation burden on your end as well for like which identities do you have to verify and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there are any of the cases where we can't populate pipeline ref that like because like I think the reason it's a big deal is because if we can't populate that, you're really providing no attestation whatsoever as far as like the build configuration, right? And the cases where we can't populate it or like, well, Ali, are there any cases where we will never be able to populate it? Do we think?
I don't think so. In the MR that was closed, there was one where we thought we couldn't, but I went back to think about it and I think we can. I think we can always do it. It'll just require some implementation effort to handle all the 7 or 8 different cases. So yeah, I think we can always put something there eventually once we get it all implemented.
Okay. It's still tough, but I think the fact that we'll get to a point of being able to populate it 100% of the time, I think makes it more okay that it would fail for now in certain circumstances.
Yeah, I would also be okay with that just because that would also help catch any
Yeah, exactly.
cases in the cracks of like, oops, we forgot to set that. So yeah, if we're reasonably confident that like we're gonna get like complete coverage on that, I think that's fine.
Okay. And then I think it's on to you for 3, Ali.
Yeah, I wanted to circle back on Sam's question about whether we're gonna be able to announce something for 16.1. It seems like pipeline ref declaim and your Fulcio PR should be able to land in time. So I guess, are we okay with announcing that signing is available only if the build config lives in the same repository? Is that something we'd be okay with, or do we still want to delay it until the next milestone when we have support for different types of configs?
I think it'd be worth it to do in 16.1 just because like the case where the config is local to the project is like the overwhelming majority of cases. I think the main one where it's not is when like auto DevOps is enabled, just because I think that's enabled. Is it right that's enabled by default on projects that don't have?
It
pipeline
might
configuration?
be.
It depends, but yeah, so I guess, does this resolve the earlier question of perhaps some of those values changing later on?
Yeah, so with
Like, would they be able to rely on the fields in the certificate?
yeah, once Marshall's PR lands and my MR with the pipeline ref lands, which we expect to, then we don't have to worry about stuff on the certificate changing. It's just that if the pipeline config does not live in the repository, you won't be able to do keyless signing at this point.
That's okay. Yeah, I agree. Let's announce it then. If that's the case, I'll create a merge request for that release post item and let's just block it on those 2 other MR and PRs. To make sure that those go in first.
In terms of documentation, what were we looking for?
So we need something that we can point to in our GitLab docs that describes how it works and that it exists. So that would be a good place to call out those limitations that you mentioned of like, oh, it only works if the build config lives in the same repository. I can work with you to find the right page in docs for it, but we should have something in our documentation that talks about what it is and how to get started using it, like a set of instructions.
Sure.
Are there any other limitations that we can think of? I guess part of that would be documenting once we support it, the behavior when the config is not local.
Probably also calling out that it only works for GitLab.com, at least for now.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yep, for sure.
And then there's like potentially differences when it's like a remote HTTP reference versus local to instance. I guess that case kind of ends up being like the claim value is just set a certain way, right? That's all we need to document there.
Yeah.
Could we talk through how to implement this? So if I wanted to start using keyless signing in 16.1, am I just adding additional YAML to my CI/CD file, or how do I do this? Does it just happen by default?
So we don't have, what's it called? Ambient credential detection at this point.
Right.
So there's this ID tokens keyword, and you would set, I think it's called SIGSTOR token something. There's a defined value you would set there, and then cosign will automatically pick up that token.
Do you have like an example project where it's happening that maybe I
I
could take a
do.
look at?
I
I
do.
think that'll help me know where it should go in the docs.
I'll just find that and paste it in the doc once I have it.
Okay, I think we
Or
actually
in Slack.
might want to add this in a couple places in our docs and then just link, like we'd actually document it in one place and then we'd mention it maybe in one or two others and link back.
And I think there's some specific stuff in there that we're gonna want to mention as just good security hygiene. Like for example, you should only like you should try to build at least on GitLab CI. You should try to build and sign the artifact in the same job rather than like building the artifact in one job and then like passing it as an output artifact to another job that signs it. It's better to build and sign in the same job.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think we should include like recommended setup. We should include that information too. So yeah, I can work with you, Ally, to find the right place in the docs, but we just want to document all of that somewhere, so that someone not on this team who wanted to get started using it could go somewhere and know how to set it up and what the limitations are and what to expect.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Are there any other topics that we need to discuss today? Looks like this is all.
One last thing on the docs. Once you guys have something available on the GitLab side, feel free to send it over my way. We can see where we can add it on the SIGSTOR side for the SIGSTOR documentation.
Okay, yeah, that sounds
Okay.
great. I will tag you in. All right, is there anything else to discuss?
But yeah, I have one more thing, but we'd have to stop the recording.
Sure, we can end it here. Thanks, everyone.